Good evening. Today's topic is, I knew I would pass the PMP, and here's my method. I'm sure, I bet, that you've asked yourself these questions. Will I pass the PMP test? How can I be sure I'm ready to pass the PMP test? These are good questions, and here are my answers. First of all, if you're asking yourself, will I pass the PMP test, you really have to get over that quickly. You have to be confident that the PMP is a series of learning assignments, and if you focus on all the learning assignments, if you put in the time, you will pass the PMP test. It's really more of a question of how can you be sure you are ready to pass the PMP test at a certain time. So I estimate this lesson will take about 15 minutes, perhaps a little bit less. And yes, I feel like I was about 80% sure I would pass the PMP test when my time came to take it. Before I begin, let me just introduce myself. My name is Richard Kraneis. That's me over there. My name is unique. It is my brand. I am the only Richard Kraneis in the US or anywhere to my knowledge. There's more information about me at the end of this video. Most importantly, I do hope that you subscribe today. If you enjoy this video, please subscribe and leave comments, give me new ideas for new videos. I try to do a video at least once a week. I also would like to say special thanks to my YouTube visitors. Today, December 1st, 2013, I passed 9,000 views per month. Thank you so much. Here's the proof of 9,000 views per month. It's just wonderful. But let's return to the topic of I knew I would pass the PMP, and here's my method. Before I begin, let me just say that I hate tests. I really do hate tests. I spent my college career avoiding tests as much as possible. I'd rather write 2 30-page papers rather than take a huge final exam. So please understand, I really dislike tests more than most people, really. Secondly, I want you to know that I accepted the fact that for the first time in decades, yes, decades, I would be taking probably the hardest test I had ever taken. I would be taking the PMP test. I accepted that fact. I didn't fight it. I knew I had to beat it. I knew I had to study and conquer it. And third, I'd just like to say that I decided that in this test environment, I would attack every question I saw with my full, quick attention. In the test environment, I never cared whether I was on question number 1 or 149 of 200 PMP questions. I never worried about if I had 200 questions to go, or 75 questions, or 19 questions left on the PMP test. All that mattered was the question in front of me. All I knew is that I had 1.2 minutes to solve each question. That's 240 minutes divided by 200 questions. Knock out each question in 1 minute and you'll have a little time left over to review your answers. This is kind of strange, but I just realized I focused on every test question as if I was fighting for a loose rebound in a basketball game. That's my favorite sport. Every basketball bouncing off the rim was mine. Every PMP question was mine to answer. So, you want to pass the PMP? Probably the best advice is take PMP practice tests. I use 3 sites on the internet to take tests. I paid for the privilege to do so over at Kaplan's self-test software. That was my main source. There are others. Just look for them on the internet. And as I have said in my other PMP YouTube videos, I studied 700 Kaplan PMP questions. I didn't just take 700 questions. I studied every single question I had wrong and took notes. I also, once after I'd finished that, I studied 300 questions before my test date. So I studied a total of 1,000 PMP questions. Now let's talk about time pressure. I wanted to pass the PMBOK 4 test by July 30th, 2013. I knew that waiting for PMBOK 5 in August would require learning different processes different than what I had studied. I think a lot of you faced that same question, and some of you decided to wait a little bit longer and have more time to take PMBOK 5 as a test. But in my case, my timing was different. I chose to take the test in June 2013. If I failed, and I wasn't planning on failing, I knew I could take the test one more time in July 2013 before the test changed from PMBOK 4 to PMBOK 5. But you don't have to have the official time pressure I had. You can take practice tests until you feel good enough to take the PMP test. When you like your PMP scores, and this is really important, When you like or are satisfied with your PMP test scores, then you can schedule the PMP test for about 2 to 3 weeks out in the future and then take the PMP. So getting on to more of the details, you take your practiced PMP tests and you measure your success. This is all about measurement and feeling confident with the results that you're having. So over at Kaplan at selftestsoftware.com, there are 200 questions in 4 hours, just like the PMP test. Remember, I had studied all 700 questions in Kaplan's PMP test before I took their practice test. On my first try on the full-fledged 4-hour 200 question test in a Kaplan environment, on my first try I scored over 85%. But once again, remember, I had studied a lot before taking that first test. After I did that, I moved on to Oliver Lehman's site, a famous site on the internet, and they had a free 75 question test that I took under time pressure. They allocated 90 minutes for that. It's not the same. A 90-minute test is not the same as a 2-hour test, but it was free, so I took it. And after that, I took a test at Simply Learn, and they had a full 200 questions in 4 hours. They measured only 175 of the questions, just like the PMP. So here's my test history, and this is where you get a sense of my confidence building or being shaken just a little bit. I was happy to get an 85% and worried that I next had a 58% and then slightly optimistic when my score improved. If you take a look over here, this is the Kaplan score. It was 85%, actually greater than that, and that was a full-blown 200 question 4-hour test. Then I followed up with Oliver Lehman, and my test score dropped using his test methodology to not quite 59%. So I went from 85 to 59. That wasn't a good day, but I figured that I would keep working at it and it would get better. And so my next test, another week after that, a 4-hour test, was 64%, and that was from Simply Learn. Now, I did pass the PMP, passing it in June 24, 2013, but they don't give out test scores for that. So this was the question I was asking myself after I had taken these 3 tests. I began asking myself, is my average of 69% on test scores good enough to pass the PMP? Well, my test scores had averaged 69%, but I knew that my Kaplan score was over 85%. So that's a bit divergent, kind of a range. Then I found this on the internet, and it said that in 2005, the Project Management Institute said the passing score was 61%. So they haven't printed anything since then, but I felt confident I was better than that minimum score. And once again, I was averaging 69%, as you can see here, but more importantly, on the huge test that I had prepared for, it was 85%. So I felt confident that I could pass it. And this is the item that indicated to me, I found this on the internet, that PMI was passing people with a minimum score of 61%. What they do now, I cannot tell you. So, in summary, I knew I would pass the PMP. And my method, first of all, I hated tests, and you probably feel the same way. And this is very important. You get over it. I did. The PMP is test-based. You have to accept that face and live it. Accept that fact and live it. So you devour every PMP question. You have 1 minute to pass each one. Get used to it. And you want to pass the PMP? Take PMP practice tests. Now, PMI does not require that you take PMP practice tests. So first you study, then you test, then you study some more. All I can tell you is if I was running a PMP class and you were my student, and now I'm getting inquiries about people who'd like to take the PMP class from me, I'd require that you take the PMP pre-test. It's so important for your success. So you take the PMP test and then you measure your success. And it's very important to take 4-hour and 200 question tests. It's not good enough to take 90-minute or 2-hour pre-tests, because what happens is you have to ask yourself, can you sit for 4 hours without food or water or a bathroom break and answer 200 questions under time pressure? Now, I'm human, and halfway through, after I had finished 100 questions, I absolutely had to take just a brief break to the bathroom. And now, speaking politely, I didn't need 10 to 15 minutes, but I was in a prometric test environment, and because of the delays, they had to check me out. I did visit the restroom. I had to come back, and they had to go through their procedures again to check me back in. So this took at least 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. So I had a 10 to 15 minute break in the middle of my PMP test. And once again, I had practiced doing this and speaking politely, not using a restroom, but I needed to take a 10 to 15 minute break. So if you're human, this may happen to you also. But I still managed to finish the test with 10 minutes to spare. So what this tells me is that I finished the PMP test in approximately 220 minutes instead of the 240. So, and this is from a guy that hates tests. I don't like tests. I had just focused on passing this test and devouring each question. So, I really believe if you're averaging over 70% correct on your PMP pre-tests, I think you're ready to take and pass the PMP. And once again, remembering that in 2005, the Project Management Institute said the minimum to pass the test was 61%. Can we both agree that you can beat that, can't you? I'm rooting for you. I think you can do it. So that's what happened. I passed the PMP. On Monday, June 24th, 2013, I passed the PMP test. I hugged my wife when I came downstairs, and she made fried chicken for dinner. Wonderful as always. And then, for all of you folks in the United States and Canada who follow hockey, the Chicago Blackhawks won the Stanley Cup on the same day that I passed the PMP. So that's it for today. I do hope that you've enjoyed this. Please subscribe and leave comments. And to close, branding for myself, my name is Richard Kraneis. It is a unique name, a unique brand. I am the only Richard Kraneis in the U.S. or anywhere. And I am a PMP from Chicago, Illinois, USA, as of June 2013. I am a business analyst, sometimes a project manager, and a SharePoint evangelist in Chicago, Illinois, USA. If you have new projects or training engagements, or you're an employer or recruiter, you're welcome. Send a brief business message to me on LinkedIn. And please tell your PMP study group about my YouTube videos. And I'd also like to send a thank you because recently I received 2 separate PMP training requests from Japan and Canada. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Thanks for visiting, and best wishes on passing the PMP test on the first try.